Good morning and welcome to the Paulding County Board of Commissioners special call meeting, December 18, 2014. And I'd like to welcome all our elected officials and guests. We have two new commissioners. If y'all stand, Bernie Collette was sworn in this morning, and Tony Crow was sworn in this morning. And we'd like to honor Tommy Graham for his years of service and David Barnett. It takes a whole village to raise a commissioner.
That was a good one.
Recognizing elected officials, we don't get to see them dressed up very much, but we have Sheriff Gary Gulledge. And you have a guest, Eric Johnson, I believe.
I did.
Thank you all. I'll call the meeting to order. Remind you to turn off all cell phone, Nextels, and pager. Looking at citizen wishing to participate. Nobody signed up for the special call meeting. At this time, if y'all stand with me, if you're able, I'll do the invocation and pledge. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable unto Thee, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Lord, we thank you for our blessings, and we thank you for the military that allows us to come and meet together and run our county. Lord, without them serving, we wouldn't have freedom. Lord, we ask your richest blessings upon the outgoing commissioners and upon the new commissioners coming in. Give them wisdom and knowledge and discernment. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask for the forgiveness of our sins. And all this we ask, and we all say, Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With reports from committees and departments, we have Mike Jones who's going to give us an update on the issuance of the USACE 404 permit.
Commissioners, I have, like you, waited for a 404 permit for a number of years. We've been at this about 15 years. And I wanted to update you on the status of that. Kelly's going to put up a slide here in just a second that shows the update on the permitting. What I want to share with you is there are 3 remaining items in terms of permitting that has to be issued before we can physically start construction of the reservoir. The first thing that needs to be issued is the Georgia EPD 401 Water Quality Certification document. That's prepared by our state EPD and it's sent to the Corps. And that signifies to the Corps that all environmental work associated with the 404 has been completed. The next permit we need is a water withdrawal permit from the Georgia EPD, and that gives us the authority to withdraw water from the Etowah River for the purpose of impounding it at Richland Creek Reservoir. And then once those 2 are issued, then the Corps will issue a Section 404 permit, and that will allow us to start construction. That's really what all this work up is, what we've been working up to. We received this week a timeline from the EPD on the issuance of the 401 water quality certification. The 401 certification will be issued within 3 weeks, finally. January 15, this is the EPD schedule. What will happen is that water quality certification will be issued. There will be a 30-day comment period for that permit. And they expect to issue the final 401 water quality certification simultaneously with the water withdrawal permit in March of 2015. That is the final hurdle prior to the issuance of the 404. We have also received feedback on the 404 permit itself. 48 hours ago, the Corps of Engineers announced they have began drafting our 404 permit.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Barnett, no one will ever know how much work y'all put into pushing this. There is a lot more that has to be done besides an environmental report, besides an engineering document, besides meeting some schedule or checking some box on some regulator or bureaucrat's checklist. Y'all have pushed this, and the citizens of Paulding County are and will be ever grateful for your efforts. We expect that permit to be issued immediately following the issue of the 401C and the water withdrawal permit, first quarter of 2015.
I'd like to add to that an incredible amount of time that Michael Carter, during his tenure, worked here. I've been in office 5 years, and for every week of those 5 years, we've done some sort of work on this reservoir because we do need the independence. We couldn't do that without help of our legislators. They've done a wonderful job. I called Senator Isaacson weeks ago, and I said, would you make a call for us to Colonel Tickner in Savannah and request that I was really hoping to shoot for December. Yeah, by the end of December, the 404 permit. He not only did that, he invited him to Washington, and they got to actually sit in the senator's office in Washington and have a discussion about our reservoir. So that's great communication. This morning, we had Congressman Graves in it, and this is significant. He spent an hour with us getting updated, and we've tried to keep him informed all along where we stand in this process. And Kelly and Mark and Mike all did a great job of bringing him up to date. He has served with Colonel Tickner on the Savannah River deepening of the port. He's been very involved, so he feels at ease to call. Now, what makes that call so significant is because of his tenure, he serves on appropriations. That's how the Corps gets their money allocated. So it's kind of nice getting a phone call asking for help on a reservoir project when you control the Corps' money. So he's willing to do that and go as far as he needs to do to help us. So he had a tight schedule today and couldn't be with us. I actually wanted him to do the invocation in prayer, and he wanted to be here to see the two new guys get sworn in, and the schedule didn't allow it. So again, Congressman Graves has worked very, very hard to see this through. And Mike, anything else you want to update?
No, sir, but if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to.
Y'all have any questions?
Yeah, it'll be, your first item will be Kelly coming to finish out this presentation, which will update you on funding and where we stand with the CMAR contract.
Okay. Under new business, number 1, discuss action on the updated pricing on PC Construction Manager at Risk Design Contract 30% GMP for the Richland Creek Reservoir Water Supply Program. Kelly Comstock.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kelly Comstock, Program Manager for the Richland Creek Water Supply Program. Today, we are going to be talking about the 30% guaranteed maximum price that has been in development over the past couple of months for the 2 pump stations and the water treatment plant component of the water supply program. The other thing we were hoping to talk to you about today was additional funding availability from GFA through the SDI program, the State Direct Investment Program. However, the schedule did not align as we had hoped. They have generated a proposal based on various scenarios that we've interacted with them on, looking at opportunities for them to fund the project. They've given us very positive feedback on the information that the county has provided. They've indicated that they've, as I said, generated a proposal. They were initially wanting to present that to us this week. However, they were not able to schedule a meeting with the governor's office, which they felt they had to do before they could present this proposal to us. So they've committed to meeting with the governor's office the first week of January, and then meeting with Paulding County shortly after that. So although we intended to have this update now, it's a little premature, obviously, because of the holidays interacting with their schedule. So
now, Mike, what was it? What all did you ask to try to get some kind of range? And
I tried every way I could to get a number from them. I emailed the attorneys at GFA and the project managers at GFA, and I promised them that I wouldn't tell anybody but a couple of the commissioners, and we wouldn't make a big to-do about it. And they went back and decided whether or not they could share with us the level of funding that they're going to give us. They come back and said no, and I tried. I said, well, how about a range? How many zeros does it have? I mean, I couldn't get anywhere with them. They called me this morning to say we can't release anything. All I can tell you is very, very positive for Paulding County, but I got to let the governor see it before y'all do. So it'll be the first week of January. We should have some very good news for the people of Paulding County. Remember, this funding that we're talking about does not get paid back. So every dollar that we get in this SDI funding source is a dollar the citizens don't have to repay. So if you're talking about a $150 million project, if you get $1 million, now we only have to pay back $149. So that's sort of how we're viewing this money.
Is this the money is this in a, that's in a pot that they've allotted, or is this something separate from that pot that they've allotted?
I can't get a gauge on that. The original pot was $39 million, I believe, and then there was some follow-on funding that came available that upped that a little bit. We've made several presentations to them explaining that their investment in Paulding County not only helps Paulding County, but as they reduce our dependence on metropolitan Atlanta water, Cobb Marietta, it helps the region as a whole. So they see that. I'm very encouraged that this is going to be a large number, and unfortunately we won't find out until after Christmas.
Let's take one moment. Mr. Pownell, I believe you have a special guest that just entered the room. If you'd like to recognize him.
No. Yeah, my father, Jim Pownell, sitting in the back.
Thank you.
I'm not fortunate to have my father with me today. He's with me every day, but I know you're honored to have him.
Thanks for being here, Dad. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No problem. So today we're going to talk about the CMAR estimate for the 30% design. And just to refresh everyone what a CMAR is, that's the construction manager at risk. Right now, the components of the program that we're going to be talking about are the two pump stations, the one at the Etowah River, the one at the reservoir, and the water treatment plant. Those facilities are all being designed by Arcadis. They're the design engineer that's in the design process. They're at the 30% design threshold right now. Using the CMAR methodology, you brought on board PC Construction, that's a contractor, to work hand in hand with the design team during the design process. And out of that, we get a better understanding of the constructability of the new facilities as the design gets developed. We have the opportunity to do something that's called value engineering, and I'll discuss that in a little while. We're also able to generate cost estimates that are construction cost estimates during the design process that allow us to better understand exactly what the construction costs are going to be. And we have a good understanding of what the construction schedule will be based on the input of the construction manager at risk. Throughout this process, we will go through different gates. We'll go through a 30% gate, a 60% gate, and then a 90% gate. These are basically guaranteed maximum prices based on where the design is at the current time. They will change over time, and ideally they will drive down, and ultimately it'll reach a level that the county will then initiate a contract with the CMAR contractor to actually construct it. So today is nothing more than a briefing letting you know at this 30% level where we're at, and then going through that gate to go to the next design process.
And that contract is basically a guaranteed max. In
That's-
other words, anything above that, the construction manager pays.
That's correct, once that's established, once you're going to contract with them, that is correct. One thing we had mentioned before, and that I wanted to reiterate, is that because this is GFA funding, there's a requirement for everything to be competitively bid. So even when the design reaches the 100% design threshold, those design packages will be competitively bid among contractors to make sure you're getting the best value possible within the overall project. As we mentioned, today's components that we're going to be talking about are the two that are highlighted in green. The river intake and pump station, that's a 60 MGD pump station, and then the water treatment plant and the reservoir intake structure. And just to give a little bit of an overview of what these facilities are, the Etowah River intake and pump station is located on the Etowah River. It has 4 15 MGD raw water pumps. The capacity of the pump station is a lot higher than the water treatment plant because, as you recall, the way this system will work is you will pull water out of the Etowah River during high flow events, when power generation is occurring in the reservoir, or when there's high rain events. You'll pull water out of the river and you'll keep the reservoir full. Then during low flow periods, you won't pull water out of the river and you'll allow the water to come out of the reservoir, and the level of the reservoir will drop slightly. So this requires a very high capacity at this reservoir pump station.
I believe I heard Mike Jones explain to the congressman, is this the area where you talked about if there was a minnow within 2 inches of the screens, it wouldn't be?
Yeah, there were some concerns that the citizens had to use that riverway where they're fishing or boating. What sort of dangers are we introducing into the stream with having those large suction pumps pulling water out of it? And as you can see, those screens create an incredibly large surface area. It reduces the flow into those screens down to 1 foot per second, which is so low that a small minnow could swim within 2 inches of those screens and not be impinged upon them.
Yep, and those screens will be located below the water surface, obviously, so a boater or anyone going by really won't know that they're present. So that's an overview of the reservoir pump or of the intake and pump station at the Etowah River. It then pumps water through that 48-inch pipeline that was the design-build contract that was approved at the last meeting to the reservoir itself. Fills the reservoir, and then out of the reservoir there will be a separate pump station. It's located out on this finger here. There's a tower that's located here that'll house the pumps, and then a discharge pipeline that'll feed back up about a mile through a pipeline to the water treatment plant. All of these facilities here are also included in the CMAR estimate that's being developed. There are 4 approximate 7 MGD pumps that are located in this pump station, and there's space for 4 additional pumps. So ultimately, when the county expands the plant to 36 MGD, it's just a question of installing additional pump capacity. You won't have to install a separate intake.
So it includes that pipeline. It does not include the pipeline from the Etowah River to the reservoir, but the pipeline where the pump takes it out of our reservoir up to the
To the water
plant.
plant. That is correct.
This includes
That's
that.
correct. And at this time, we've got this in this contract just because the same contractors will be doing these 2 ends. Ultimately, if it makes the most sense to break that out as a separate pipeline bid package, it'll really be dictated upon the schedule of construction of these 2 things, and can the plant contractor get out of the way in time to allow a third-party contractor to come in. That's one of the things that's going to be evaluated, but for the purpose of long-term planning in terms of the overall program costs, we've got that component built in of this cost at this point. And that's a little over $1.5 million for that pipeline that you mentioned. One of the things I wanted to point out is this section of land here will be on one of the next agenda items. That's some of the land that the county is looking to purchase where the reservoir itself is, or where the water plant itself is going to be located, as shown there. The water treatment plant is going to be constructed with an initial capacity of 18 million gallons a day. It'll be laid out to be able to treat 36 MGD. So over time, as demand increases, you'll be able to expand the facility. The treatment process itself includes coagulation, a process known as dissolved air flotation, which is a state-of-the-art process used for coagulating and removing organics and particulate within the water. It's especially effective on lake water sources where you have a lot of algae present. So this is very suitable water technology treatment for this water supply source. Following that, there will be dual media filtration that removes any of the pathogens or small diameter particles that are left in the water and produces high-quality water. That's the typical type of process, a coagulation, a sedimentation process, and a filtration that is standard for the industry. You also have an additional treatment process that's going in, and that's post-filter GAC contactors. One of the big issues that we're facing in the industry is that we have to chlorinate the water, obviously for pathogens, to be able to disinfect the water. But they're finding that chlorination of organics creates disinfection byproducts that can also be harmful long-term. So the EPA and EPD are regulating those disinfection byproducts to a greater and greater degree. This technology that you're putting in now allows you to reduce the organics prior to that chlorine addition and keeps your level of disinfection byproducts low. This same technology is being used by Cobb County Marietta Water Authority. They just installed it at their Wyckoff plant, which is also the same water, approximate same water source coming out.
Now, this is the same stuff that we actually tested this equipment at.
Yes, that's correct, yes. You
Was
ran a
to make
pilot.
sure what worked best and
That's
long-term maintenance and all those things.
That's correct. The loading rates, the design criteria are all established on the actual water quality that you will have coming out of the Edward River Basin. So yeah, all of these have been piloted by Calder County for this project. The facility also will include an administration building. This is a facility that will be manned 24 hours a day. So there will be an admin building that includes a process lab where the operators can check the process, as well as a control room. It will be a highly automated system where it'll be a lot of computerized controls. So there'll be a central control room allowing them to operate the facility, as well as the pump station at the reservoir, as well as remote sites such as the intake pump station as well. There'll be some offices, locker rooms, et cetera, to support a 24-hour operation. So the CMAR process for the 30% GMP, Arcadis developed a 30% design for all of these facilities, and for the past couple of months have been coordinating with the CMAR contractor, with PC Construction, who has been doing an initial cost estimate on their preliminary design. So in the middle of November, they came back with the initial cost estimate. They generated about a 250-page cost estimate, and their number was right at $97 million. This was higher than what we were looking for. So what we did was we engaged in what's called a value engineering exercise. And that's where PC is the CMAR, Arcadis, and Brown & Caldwell reviewed the design, looking for cost-saving opportunities. Now, we established some benchline criteria. We needed to maintain the same level of reliability, the same level of performance. We didn't want to change to produce lesser quality of water or have a lower O&M capability associated with the facility. We wanted to consider the long-term operations. We didn't want to spend less money up front, but create a situation where it costs a lot more to operate the facility. We wanted to take that into account. We wanted to look to leverage the contractor's experience. They built, hundreds of similar sized facilities. What have they done previously that can save money in terms of construction costs? And because we had a very detailed cost estimate of every nut and bolt associated with the preliminary design, we're able to focus in on those high cost elements. Where one might have thought the admin building may have been a very high cost, it really wasn't compared to some of the other areas. And we were able to focus our attention on those high cost areas to look for alternatives, develop them, cost them out, and see what made the most sense. We identified 55 different potential cost reductions through this value engineering process. And I'll give you a highlight of a couple of them here. This is an example at the raw water pump station. The original concept had an intake structure located right here on the bank of the river, had the screens as we saw out here. Water would come into this structure and then go through a common pipeline down into a wet well that was located some good 300 feet off of this structure here. So if you look at the grade associated with it, there's a substantial amount of excavation that's required there. Based on the underlying geology, there were piles that were required, there was additional deep foundation work. That was a very costly component associated with the construction. If that were all clay, you could dig it down, it really wouldn't be that bad. But this was a very silty material that shifted very easily, so it had a very, very high construction cost associated with it. So Arcadis looked at an alternative concept where instead of having a separate structure 300 feet from the river, we actually located the structure right on the river with the pumps here. That allowed us to keep the pressurized discharge shallow and really reduce the amount of excavation that was required. So a big cost savings there. Same functionality, same capacity coming out of the pump station, same ability to access the pumps, etc. Another example, at the water treatment plant. The original design had 2 independent chemical storage buildings with a drive-through area for delivery. There are some of these areas where there are large outdoor tanks that are going to be located, and then interior rooms where there are pumps and smaller tanks that feed the actual chemicals into the system. Instead of doing these 2 independent buildings, Contractor recommended looking at doing one large building to utilize a concept known as common wall construction. So the fewer walls you have, obviously, the easier it is to construct. So by doing one large room with all of the pumps inside and locating the tanks around the outside, there was a significant savings in terms of the overall construction associated with the element. Additionally, looking at the processes, one of them that we looked at changing was the GAC. Obviously, we needed to have the GAC process, but there are a couple different ways of doing it. The original design was a gravity system that was designed similar to the filters, where flow just went through it by gravity within the existing hydraulic profile. Another option is the vessel style, and you'll see here these are large vessels that have the same GAC within them. The difference is you need to pump into these vessels, so there's a little bit higher operating cost to pump. The good thing is that you're not pumping year-round. This system is actually designed to operate just during the summertime, because that's when those disinfection byproducts form, is during the summertime. During the wintertime, those numbers are very low, because their formation is dependent upon temperature. So you're not pumping all the time. Additionally, this carbon has to be removed periodically. It's similar to a household carbon filter where you have to periodically change it out. In the gravity situation, it's a lot of work to go in there and shovel all that media out of those basins. Here, you can come in and hook up a hose and slurry the media in and out. So from an operations perspective, even though you have to pump to these systems, they're a lot easier to maintain long term. This is actually the style system that Cobb Marietta implemented at the Wyckoff Water Treatment Plant.
We did that 2 or 3 years ago.
That's correct. Came online 2 years ago. Yes.
And this is also, in this where we have a savings that you send this material off.
That's correct.
You get the same material back.
That's
to
correct.
have it
Yeah.
Clean.
From an operations perspective, there are a couple of options. You can either take your existing carbon and go regenerate it. They regenerate it in kilns at high temperatures, and then you get your same carbon back, or you can purchase brand new virgin carbon each time. And there is a savings by getting your same carbon back, and they actually track that so that you don't get carbon that was used in some other application that you wouldn't want.
And you add to that something like 10 or 15%.
15% for makeup, that's correct, yes, sir. The advantage of the vessel style, not only is it a lower capital cost for this element, because we're no longer having to account for it within the hydraulic profile, all of the downstream components, including the large clear well, which is a big storage tank, and the pump station, they can then move up in terms of elevation. So we're able to move that whole back end up about 10 feet. So that's 10 feet less excavation, 10 feet less into the rock area in some places. So there was a substantial savings in terms of excavation associated with this option. So once again, same level of treatment, just a different way of doing it, but a much lower construction cost. So with the revised items that came out, the new CMAR price is right at about $83 million. So you can see a substantial savings from the original construction estimate was there. It's important to point out there are a couple other areas that are under review. Not all 55 of them were we able to decide on at this point. One example is the power feed. Because of the loads associated with this facility, we'll likely be able to select either Georgia Power or Greystone because of the location of these facilities. And there will potentially be an option of getting a dual electrical feed to this facility. And that means you basically have incoming power from 2 different major substations. So if you ever had one major substation go down, you have the redundancy of another one. And the advantage of that is that's a very stable, long-term power supply situation where you'll never lose power to the site. As a result, you don't have to have on-site power generators. Right now, within the estimate, we've got standby power built into the cost, and that's about $2 million. So if in the discussions with Greystone or Georgia Power, whoever we end up with the supplier, they are able to supply with dual power feed, then we'll be able to reduce the cost by a couple other $1 million associated with the generators.
They actually bid for that?
Yes, that's an opportunity for us to bid competitively to get better pricing. Yeah. There's also a contingency that the contractor's carrying, and that's for sort of undefined elements associated with the current design, as it's only at the 30% level, and that's another $2 million. And as the design progresses, that contingency will reduce. So ultimately, we're close to the $80 million mark right now with the current facility. I wanted to point out that this type of methodology is doing exactly what you want it to do. You are in the design process, getting that real-time feedback from a contractor to be able to drive the cost down. So in a couple of places we changed direction, we're able to do it early in the design point versus going all the way through the design process and then having to go back and redesign something. So we're seeing great results from the CMAR process, and I just wanted to point out that the designer, Arcadis, and PC Construction, they have been working feverishly for the past 2 months, working on the design, getting into this standpoint, and PC Construction has done an outstanding job going through iterations of ideas and costing out various options. Sometimes you go down a path thinking it'll be the best thing, and it ends up being more costly, and so then you back up. So I wanted to commend both of those teams because they're doing an outstanding job for Paulding County and making sure that you have the most cost-effective, best facility.
Where does the 80 million come in as far as what your initial estimates when we were doing the financial modeling?
So
higher,
yeah.
lower?
It's right in line with, I think we were not far off from that, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of the next step is we're recommending that we do an update now that we have all of these costs in, that we do an update after we find out what the SDI number is going to be, so that that financial model will be updated based on where we're at right now with the process. So we're thinking January, February, that would be a good time to come in.
You said we're not far off. What's not far off to you?
$5
or $5 million?
No, I think we were at roughly 75 or so within the original cost estimate. So like I said, we're within where we think we would end up. The pipeline came in a little bit less for the design build. So you really have to look at where everything is. And I think we're at a good snapshot point now moving forward. So the next steps with this process would be to proceed with the design to the 60% level. Throughout this process, to continue to drive down costs. Those additional 55 items that haven't been ferreted out, we'll continue to look at those during the 30 to 60% stage. We should reach the 60% GMP level in May or so of 2015. So that's when the next number would come back in front of the commission, and hopefully it'll be even lower than what we're seeing right now. And as I mentioned, it would be a good time in January or February for the BOC to hear an update of the overall financial plan for the program, because at that point we'll have a better understanding of the SDI funding, and we can make an educated decision in terms of the options that are out there are how much of the distribution system you end up building. When we look at, I think you've seen this graph previously, this is a comparison of several of the different capacity concepts that we were looking at. The status quo, this gray line, is the do-nothing approach, the continued purchase of water from Cobb Marietta Water Authority. These 4 colored lines represent different initial capacity increments of implementation of the program. Obviously, what this shows is the cost of water to produce water. Obviously, you want to get this number as low as possible, as quickly as possible, because that keeps your overall lifespan cost of the project low. And if you look at the total net present value of the different scenarios, all of them are significantly less than the status quo, which is continue buying water, which we are doing right now. There are basically 4 different scenarios, and these scenarios are tied to distribution system improvements that are required. There are several 24-inch lines and a 36-inch line. This 5 MGD, for example, is implementing just the smallest, shortest 24-inch line. That would allow you to serve about 5 MGD of your population. The 10.7 is a large 36-inch line instead of that 24, and this 36-inch goes all the way down State Route 61. The 12.8 scenario is that 24 and the 36 together, and then 18 is even further out. So obviously, when you look at the total net present value, the best long-term value for the citizens of Paulding County, the quicker you can get to a larger production capacity, the better. That has to be weighed with the upfront capital cost of doing these improvements. Obviously, this is the cheapest just based on the distribution.
But what that previous chart also shows is that during that initial building that we will have to charge more for water because we gotta pay for this.
That's correct, yeah, there will be, you will have to, basically, long-term, you'll be at this level here, but in the short term, you will have to incur a higher, water rate. to
And
be able
which
to-
those rates should start changing next year in
Right.
order to start accommodating so that you don't go from $5.50 to $7 at once. But that
Exactly.
you work up to it and you build cash in
Right.
order to do it.
That's right, and so that's where the January, February update will be good, because then we'll have that known number, we'll know what funding is already in place from GFA in terms of loans, we'll know SDI opportunity, and then the delta would be revenue bonds.
Did these numbers include some SDI investment or?
These do not.
Okay, so these costs are actually, if we have to pay everything
That's
back.
correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it could be up to 39 million. And that's what Mike was saying earlier. We should know that, what number that's going to be sometime in the first week in January.
Yes, what Chief has indicated is that there's a number proposal to the county and a component. And as we've discussed, we think that would be them likely funding some of the distribution system piping.
When we talk to them, this is a work in progress because this is something that GFA has not ever done before. So they're looking, if they invest in Paulding County and they invest this money from the state, what do they get for that dollar? And they like to own an asset. So owning that asset is the pipeline. Right now, because of the way our water system is designed, we get our water from Cobb Marietta, which runs east-west. We'll have to build a north-south distribution system, and this is what the state says, this would be excellent to own because then your pipeline would be laid in the right-of-way of a state highway. So there'll be a portion of that pipeline that they would actually have. And then the way this works is you have depreciation that would begin at that point, and then at some point it would be depreciated out, and that asset becomes Paulding's asset. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir, you are. I would add that the law requires the state to own something. It can't just give you the money. So
You can't invest like 30% into our big project.
correct.
Can't own that.
They, even if they agree with everything we're doing, and they do, they can't just write a check and say, hey, we'd like to help you with 20% of your reservoir. The law won't allow them to do that with those dollars. So they physically have to own a definable asset, a piece of property, a building. In this case, it's a water line that's laid in state right-of-way that you can draw a property deed to, and then they lease that back to us for $1 a year for 50 years or however long it is. But yeah, it's a technicality of the way the law was written. They don't really want to own a water line.
Kelly, that the last few screens that you
Yes.
showed us, we also had the two newly elected commissioners in those meetings separately a
Yes.
few weeks back. And so that's they've been told this too.
Yes, sir.
They've been kept involved in the loop.
Yep. And when we talk about the funding, as we mentioned, the SDI is not built into this, and it's important to recognize that there is also potential additional long-term funding because SDI is a program that they may continue doing. There may be additional funding. It may be a situation where the state comes in, like if Paulding said all we could afford would be the 5 MGD scenario, the state may come in and say, okay, we're going to provide you the funding for the 36 to be able to go to the 10.7, and then 2 years from now, we'll provide you with additional funding to go to the additional 24 to go to 12. So there may be, because it's also the state's desire to get Paulding County off of Lake Allatoona as quickly as possible. So they're wanting to drive you towards that 18 MGD as quickly as possible as well.
So we had we had a legislative listening day, and we told them what money they allocated into this program would buy them, so they understood the importance that you're not just funding something and seeing it go up in the air, but you're actually getting to own an asset, and you're getting, because of the water wars with now Florida and probably Alabama joining that, this helps so much because allocations have not been reallocated since 1986. Since 1986. So it was just a couple of weeks ago, the Cobb Marietta Water Authority sued the Corps of Engineers and asked them to please do their job and make the allocation that was asked for. Well, what this helps, if all else fails, this reservoir being built actually helps the entire state in the water wars. In the water wars, we've had Senator Sessions to say in a document that everything that's said, that he agrees Richland Creek ought to be built, which would help in part of the water wars we're in. David, I think you had a question.
Well, you really began to answer the question that I was thinking about on additional SDI funds, but there's 39 million, and in January, if we hear we get 15 million, it doesn't mean that a year later, 15 more might be available.
That's correct, and that has to do with the governor and additional funding that would potentially come out of the state. And as you've heard recently, the governor's appointed Judd Turner as a water czar. So obviously, water issues continue to be at the head of sort of his political perspective. So I would anticipate future additional programs, if not the SDI program, being available. And that was one of the things that in our discussions with GFA that they brought up in terms of generating the data they were looking for. They needed to have a metric of dollars per gallon of what they would get in terms of capacity based on level of investment, because they want to compare Richland to some of the other opportunities that are out there. So by setting everything up with this metrics, to me, it means that they're positioning for this program being additionally implemented in future years coming, where they can sort of judge all of these upcoming projects on a dollar per gallon basis. So definitely, I think that is a definite possibility.
Now, we're looking at this come online approximately 2019.
2019 is the time frame right now.
Now, all this money, we don't have to have today. I mean, we've got, what, $59 million allotted for it, and you only have to have the money as you go. But the purpose of the financial model is to show that if you have to bond it through revenue bonds, that the price of the water that we sell will pay for the bond.
That's correct.
But as we move forward and you get SDI funding, that hump you show will come down.
That's correct.
Part of what we've been working on also in 2001 and 2002, and this was started back with the senator that passed away, Senator Coverdale, was allocated $2 million. And every time we've tried to touch that money, the EPA says, well, there's no such thing as Richland Creek. So until you get your 404 permit, there's no way to judge that money, and almost to the point a couple of times of that money going away. And I mean, we've just fought them hard to say, please tell us. So now, what we think will happen if things proceed like they said in a conversation, Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong, there's a possibility that the money that we're voting on here for this will be covered by the $2 million that are in earmarks from 2001 to 2002.
That's correct. I think with the fees they pull out of it's around 1.8 million, but yes, they're close to $2 million. It's a 55-45 match, which means that we would have to provide them with essentially receipts of the work that we've done that total $3.5 million for them to end up reimbursing the 1.8 million Paulding County tax dollars that's sitting at Region 4 EPA right now. And there's an agenda item that you'll look at that Kelly referred to, the property, was specifically one that Chairman asked them about, I guess it was Tuesday. Was that a reimbursable expense? And they've assured us that yes, it is. So one of the agenda items you're going to vote on, that money was bonded in 1999 after the citizens voted to purchase the Richland Creek Reservoir property, and about $400,000 of that money still remaining. So that's where about half of the dollars are going to come from, but the other part will be SPOS dollars. But that is an eligible reimbursement expense with those dollars that have been sitting there for.
And if I understand correctly, the 55% match can be what we've already paid for the land.
It will be for all land that was acquired after 2007, so the only pieces that would be appropriate will be what you are about to vote on, that we acquired the other property prior to that. But we have more than enough expenses that we have already paid that will qualify for reimbursement. There's a document called Environmental Information Document, which will detail all these expenses, the EID exactly. And Tabitha is working with Ron Harris, one of our other reservoir consultants, preparing that document and showing those expenses that we've already incurred to get that money reimbursed back to us. And so it's clear, it's the 45, 55%, they pay 55% to our 45.
Any other questions?
I'd like to get a copy of this presentation.
Sure, definitely. I'll provide.
And will this be on the RCR?
Yeah, we can upload this, definitely, with the general public if they want.
That's www.rcrwater.com.
Water.com.
And one other thing, we don't ever need to lose sight of, when we started this project so many years ago, Richland Creek was really viewed as a water insurance policy for future generations for Paulding County. We had a water supply from Cobb Marietta. It looked like an endless supply of water. You know, this is going back in 1999. No one ever envisioned something like water wars would occur. This is no longer an insurance policy for future generations of Paulding County. As I'll remind you, we received a letter from Cobb Marietta in March of this year that said they can no longer guarantee Paulding County's water supply. That's an alarming letter to receive. And they encouraged us to continue with the development of Richland Creek Reservoir with great haste. So it's while that curve is neat to show that Paulding County is getting in the water business and it makes financial long-term sense to do so, it's not just a financial decision. And as I've explained to other groups that I've spoken to, if this is how you have to supply your family with water and you use the same amount that you're doing today, this is a $72,000 a month water bill.
Compared to,
Turning on the tap and letting
I
it
know,
open.
but compared to an average household price of,
Yeah, I mean, that's, folks ask, you know, water is expensive, I get it, but water is the cheapest public utility that we have by far. I mean, it's not your electric bill in the wintertime. So water is dependable, you turn your faucet on, it comes out. It's rare that folks go to a faucet, turn it on and think to themselves and wonder, hey, I wonder if something's gonna come out today. That doesn't happen all over the world, it happens here. It's just automatic, it comes out. So, but if we want to keep that assurance moving forward, this is how you do it.
we had water art, and we were teaching young kids the importance of conserving water and everything we do, and we had several young men and women that won the art contest. And so probably in our January board meeting, we'll be honoring those folks that come out with a calendar that's produced by Cobb Marietta Water, and it shows today how much more they know about water production and conservation than I've ever done. So, you know, they're coming on board smarter and brighter and greater ways to conserve. So you'll see us honoring those young kids, and you know, they can tell you, don't throw that wrapper out the window, don't leave that water hose on. There's a lot of things that they help us with, and we'll be honoring them in January. Any more questions?
We actually need to take a vote to approve this, correct?
Yes.
It's yeah, just for clarification, the action item itself, the agenda item says it says discuss action on updated pricing.
Right, this is not a contract. We need your affirmation of where you stand today with the price to continue to the 60% level. We'll update you then. The contract for the actual work will come much later, but we need your concurrence to move forward to the 60%. This work that they're doing, y'all authorized, seemed like it was back in October, I believe, which is the pre-construction services contract for PC.
The reason for this call meeting is to also show the governor that we're serious about the production of water with Richland Creek Reservoir, and helps him make his decision on the allocation in the first week of January. So I think this helps us a lot towards the full movement of independence from Cobb Marietta Water.
Well, thank Doug Turner also, he went to Savannah with us, and that was a huge plus, just with Carl Tigner, so he's gonna be the water czar now. That's another plus for us.
We're in good company. Any other discussion? Do I hear a motion to, I guess, for the pricing that we talked about And am I correct in saying that pricing was $83,714,000 with a $2 million contingency?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. It carries 5-0. Number 2, discuss action to authorize the chairman to enter into a land purchase contract and execute all related documentation for the purchase of 3 tracts totaling approximately 359 acres consisting of tax parcels 005.1.4.001.000 and 01.1.1.001.000, adjoining and in conjunction with the Richland Creek Reservoir Water Supply Program with a total purchase price of $1,061,600. Jason.
Commissioners, if my memory serves me right, you've all previously seen 3 tracts that we're proposing for acquisition on right around the edge of reservoir property that the county already owns. Those 3 tracts are a 77-acre tract, a 112-acre tract, and a 170-acre tract. They have variable prices. The 77-acre tract is one which is located just north of the dam. It lies below the dam, and I think we're going to be required to acquire this as part of this project. That's about $2,000 an acre given the current proposal. The proposed seller is 4-Star. The second tract, 112 acres, that is going to be where the water treatment plant is going to be located. And finally, the 170-acre tract is just south of that, and there is a proposal to turn this really into probably what amounts to a passive park adjoining the reservoir. The price of the water treatment plant, $2,400 an acre, and the price of the park property, $37.58 an acre. The price that's been set out at the agenda item is $1,061,000. But I wanted to let you know, we have since asked for a boundary survey to be conducted. It's been a while since this property was surveyed, so that we know exactly what the acreage amount is that is proposed for purchase. We believe it'll be very close to these acreage amounts, but the price will ultimately change depending upon what that acreage is.
And we'll actually pay the price per acre for each tract. Like if it's 77 acres, turns out to be 78, we'll pay an additional $2,000.
That's correct.
Right. Now, one of the reasons for the difference is, of course, the 112 acres and a portion of the 170, as long as I've been on here, we've been talking about buying it. We've never come to that. The 170, we needed it for access, but we were able to buy 8 acres that gave us better access. But the 112, we've always known that we had to buy.
Right, that's always where the treatment plant was going to be located. The state DOT is reviewing our access plan now for that reservoir, the site. They want it to line up with, I forget the name of the road directly. Dothan Bridge, yes.
Right.
They want it to line up there. There's a little bit of concern. I forget which direction it is about some site distance area. Yeah, that's where the access will be.
Okay, and the 77 acres was added.
The 77
That was a
acres.
new one because we'd never talked about that, but the state added that one.
That's correct.
Okay. And now, one of the reasons for the difference is on the 77 acres, they are retaining all the timber. And then on the 112, they are clear cutting 60% of the timber, but they're leaving or doing a residential thinning on the 170, which you plan to use for a passive park. So that's part of the difference in pricing.
Yeah, that and the last tract has the better access out of the 61. But yeah, the variable pricing has to do with the credit that we're getting for the timber, that they're going to cut it and they were going to hold the timber money. So that reduced our exposure on the rate.
And they have 1 year to do that, correct?
You kind of mentioned earlier how we're paying for this. 2 different.
Yeah, track 3 will be using recreational SPLOST dollars, and tracks 1 and 2 we will be using the revenue bonds that were issued back in 1999 for the acquisition of the reservoir site. And there's about $400,000 of that. There will be about $15,000 of general fund to make up the shortfall difference on the bond money.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Now, any more discussion? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It carries 5-0. Number 3, discuss action on the final design contract with Croft and Associates for the new water system facilities to be located on Macklin Road. Mike?
Mr. Chairman, sent you all an email several weeks ago when all county construction of facilities, whether it's a fire station or water system building or driver's license facility, come under the direction of the Government Services Director. When Chuck Rand left, we put a temporary hold on those so we could figure out where to assign those responsibilities. The county engineer stepped in and is finishing up the fire station, and I've since tasked him additionally with the Georgia State Patrol building that's underway and also the new driver's license facility. The remaining projects were a sheriff's training facility and the Macklin Road water system. As you know, those folks are here residing in this building right now until the new facility can be constructed. We're going to move forward with that project. That's what this contract does. This allows for the final design and construction of the new water system building for Macklin Road.
And this will include construction administration also.
This contract is broken down into 4 components. There's a design component, the preparation of construction documents, construction administration, and the civil geotech work. There is not a provision in this particular contract for the actual management of the actual physical construction itself. I have requested that from Croft. They have provided, and that will come back to you after the first of the year. But the one that's in front of you gets it through bid. So all of your design documents, your bid documents, your contract selection, insurance review, all that is covered under this contract. The actual construction management will be done by Croft, but that'll come to you in another contract.
Okay. All right, now, and this totals around $300,000 for all phases. But this is a build contract. Is that correct? Like, I mean,
This is a design bid build, that's correct. So,
In other words,
so we're going to, much unlike the reservoir project, we are doing a full design of the site and of the structures themselves. We will bid those out. Folks will submit their bids back, and we will accept the lowest qualified bidder on, probably done in 2 packages. It'll probably be a geotech or a earthwork package and then a vertical construction package.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is like design development's $124,600, but he bills based on his hours, or is he going to bill us $124,600?
He will bill us progress payments along the work line, but the last payment will make up the 124.
So we will pay him a total of $124,600 for the
Yeah,
design.
that's correct.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Now, any more discussion you'd like to have on this? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Number 4, discuss action to award the construction contract for the Sheriff's Training Center building to the low bidder, BMK Construction Engineering, in the amount of $1,035,000. Tal, I think you have the first one.
Okay, on November 21st, we received bids to construct the Sheriff's Training Center. We had 7 contractors participate. Those bids ranged from $1,035,000 to $1,341,207. Those bids have been reviewed. We have relied on Comprehensive Program Services to assist us in that process. As you know, they have operated as the program manager, and they have been out there during the site preparation and the target throughout the entire process of the Sheriff Training Center. And they do feel that this bid is a very good bid and recommend award.
Eric, would you like to come to the lectern? Eric Johnson. There's two Eric Johnsons. There's an Eric Johnson that ran for office out of Savannah.
That's not me.
That's not you.
Haven't run for governor yet.
You want to make some comments? I know that right now, and Sheriff, if you don't mind coming forward, we were in a situation where, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, the EPD said we had to get off our current property based on being close to the landfill and that we could no longer use that facility. And then the sheriff also informs me that with houses built closer by than they were when they first started, there were some stray bullets. Under safety precaution, he chose to shut that facility down, but you were ordered to do so by either EPA or EPD. I get them mixed up. The EPA is federal, EPD is state, so.
I think they was trying to do the final closure on the old landfill. It was in the way. That's my understanding from them. Of course, they're not the easiest people in the world to deal with either. So I know me and Mike Jones has had several meetings with them that look real friendly. We've managed to stay longer, probably 4 or 5 years longer than they'd like for us to be there.
And you didn't use any of them for target practice?
That's not, doesn't have anything to do with, nothing to do with the stray bullets.
We they started building some houses, I think it's Nature Walk subdivision. They encroached in behind the backstop. We was doing a lot of shooting from the ground. And I think we had 3 or 4 different bullets that got over the back berm and wound up in the side on the house over there. They had traveled about 700 yards, and I was really surprised that a 45 round would go that far. But evidently they will, so at that time I stopped using the range at all. I said, there are no more pistol shots here. We stopped doing the ground fighting at all, so there was nothing fired from the ground. That way we knew everything's going in the vein. But it just was not worth the risk. If somebody gets hit by a stray bullet, it's not a good thing, so we couldn't stop.
We acquired property in the Industrial Building Authority, and David and Dad put his operation in there. And then adjoining this property was, I won't call it throwaway property, but undevelopable. And Sheriff Gulledge took a look at this and said, I think this would make an excellent place for a shooting range. We dedicated that range, was that a week ago?
Last Thursday.
Last Thursday. You want to tell us about that and then what you hope to propose with this new building?
Yeah, last Thursday we got our people to come out and do a dedication to it, and I asked Chuck Brand to come out since he's been involved in this thing from the beginning. We've run into a lot of problems out there with, of course, as soon as we start doing anything, we run into problems. We had the money set aside to build the training center, which is a 20-lane, it's state-of-the-art pistol range. It's very nice. We tried to make it as friendly as possible to the neighborhood. I spent a lot of time in the neighborhoods dealing with the people around. Even Miss Pat's probably one of our closest neighbors.
What are you most difficult?
No. We've really had, I've been pleasantly surprised. We've had no complaints from anybody in the neighborhood at all. I went around a lot as we were shooting. I called Pat the first night we was going to do night fire, and we're required to do once a year to shoot in low light conditions. And I told her, I said, we're going to shoot about 7 o'clock, Pat, and if you would, kind of let me know what the bothering is to you. Let us know how we want to be a good neighbor. So we started shooting a little bit early, so I called her about 10 to 7. I said, well, what do you think, man? She said, well, it's not 7 o'clock yet. So we had already shot 40 people at the same time. They shot 30 rounds each, and she's probably one of our closest neighbors, and we didn't even bother us. I've been all the way around the place. It's down in the hole. We put up, I had a fight with them about this. They started off with a 12-foot berm, and as we get into the problems at the old range, we now have a 20-foot berm, and then I went and put a 6-foot privacy fence on top of that, and put belted material that comes from rock quarry behind that 6-foot fence. And then we planted cedar trees completely around it. And once they grow up, we should have, anybody shoots over there, we're probably going to have a different job besides what we did for them. I've gone out and shot on the range myself. It's so much faster. We had a 10-lane range before. We've got a 20-lane range now. We can do things, it's common math. We can do things twice as fast as we could. We intend to be good neighbors there. We had a complaint the other night. Our SWAT team was out doing night training. one of the local churches called and complained that they was hearing fireworks in the distance. So, if that's the worst complaints we got, I think we're gonna be good. I got an email, trying to give you a little background and find out how we got from where we was to where we are. In mid-October, I learned that Chuck Rand was gonna leave the county. And on October 29th, I got an email from Mike Jones that pretty much, me and Mike, we get along real well. We're short with each other because we don't have time to shoot the bull butt, so we just get it done and go. And in short form, he says, your training center building is suspended indefinitely. We don't have nobody to manage it for you. I gotta have a training center building. So I start trying to find a way to get around my job. But if you don't go around him, you gotta go through him, and I know that. Mike's always been good for me to work with. He always stops what he's doing and spends time with me when I need his time. Let me get my notes or I'm gonna get scared. On December 4th, we opened our range. Chuck came out the opening, and I thought, he's not working with the county anymore. He's doing this for his own business. I said, so I struck up a conversation with him. I said, why can't I hire you to come out here and finish the building that we've started since you're your own business? He said he'd be interested in putting a proposal together, so I thought, well, I gotta do my thing, so I gotta call Mike.
In other words, when you say finish, what you're actually, and is somebody has to sign off that if the wall said it was built and it's gonna cost $25,000 and this guy gives you a bill, that there's really a wall there. It's the county's protection.
He would be hired to protect the county's interest and make sure that no bills was paid until the work's before.
Right.
That's my understanding. I built 2 houses and I'm new at this commercial construction and I'm learning more than I want to know about commercial construction. But I talked to him, he had no issue with it at all. Talked with Mike Jones and I think his reply was short as usual, so I think it's a great idea. He said, I'll give you the bill close. Let's see. On 12/10, I received a bid back from Chuck Rand with Edison Engineering to finish the job at $19,328. Eric Johnson, I had hired previous with CPS to oversee and keep me out of trouble and make sure that everything we done went right. So I sent Chuck's bid to Eric and asked him, I said, can you tell me if you think this is a fair price? And his reply was pretty simple, that it's a whole lot fairer than he would do it for me, which tell me that we're getting a pretty good price, and I think Chuck was more interested in helping me out than he was with anything else, and getting our arranged and completed and finishing the project that he had been involved in. On the 11th, I sent the email to you, David, and asked you to take a look at it and see what you thought about the bid. Pretty much yours was saying, let's do it, let's proceed and get it done. Sent the thing to Mike Jones, he looked at it, and what I was trying to do was get Chuck involved in this so that we could finish this building up. I don't know that the public knows how frustrating and aggravating it is to build anything. And I won't say that it's just this county, but with any county. You don't just say, okay, we've got the money, let's go build this building. You've got to wait 3 weeks for the next commissioners meeting to get approval to have a building built. And then you've got to wait for the next meeting before you can get a check to pay for the publicity as you can. And it's like, if everybody was in agreement, and everybody was as interested in getting this training center built as I would, and we started today, I'm probably wrong, and I'm probably too fast about it. I'd say it'd probably be 6 months before you could ever move a shovel full of dirt. That'd be somewhere close to correct. So as we're sitting here spinning our wheels, if these contracts that we've put out, if they expire, we're going to start all over again.
And this bid is good for 60 days,
It's
right?
the low bid that we've got from, I think it's the BM&K is good for 60 days and then it expires, and then it's all over again. It's like, I've got to come back and wait on next commissioners meeting to put it on the agenda and then to have a hearing and then put it out for bids and then it's got to be advertised and you wait on the bids to come in and really the process starts all over again. I thought everything was moving along and I thought I had found a way to pretty much expedite the building and get us where we can train our guys. On the 15th, I received an email from Kelly Brown that this bid was going to be on the agenda for today's meeting. I contacted Eric and asked him would he come. At that point, I decided that, I know I've been here a bunch, I've heard all this one don't know what's going on and this one would put in the loop, so I thought, I'm going to fix that problem. I'm going to put them in the loop myself. So I picked up the phone, we had 2 new commissioners coming in, Tony Crow. I made a phone call to him. I told him what I was trying to do, I told him who I was trying to hire. He says, well, I called, after I got through talking to him, I called Vernon Collette. I talked to Vernon, and they was both pretty much the same thing. You need the building, proceed, let's get it done. They both asked a few questions about it, but after we got through talking to them, and I won't talk for them, but neither one of them had a problem with us proceeding with Chuck Brand. I then called Commissioner Powell, left a message for him, I didn't get to talk to him that day, but he called me back the following evening. He said he'd already spoken with Crow and Collette both, and said he didn't have any issues with Chuck Brand doing this building, but there was other folks who objected to it. At that time, I asked him, I said, I don't really care who does this, if you've got somebody that you'd rather use, you give me the name. He said, no, I don't have any problem with Chuck Brand doing it. Correct so far. Later that evening, I don't know why somebody chose to put me in their one of their political opponents. I didn't choose to be one of them, but I do choose to refuse to be one. I seen some post that came out on Facebook that said that we had fired a contractor so that me and Mike could hire Chuck Brand, who is a friend of Mike's, and I won't say that he's not a friend of mine, he's a business relationship with me, so that we could hire him to finish the project and he could pay in his pockets with the county's money. That's the farthest thing from the truth. I don't know who started it. I don't know where it come from. I'm here to tell you that whoever said it is a law-faced liar. We never had any, there was never nobody to hire. And I talked with Vernon Collette, he says, well, who was a contractor that was fired? I said, the meeting in a couple of days is to hire a contractor. You can't fire somebody that hasn't even been hired. I don't know what's going on with this. I come today to tell you that I need my training center built so I can train my deputies. The law requires us to train. Once a year, I have to give them use of force classes. We have to qualify on pistol range. I'm doing the best I can to give my guys a place to go. I moved a double wide trailer over there. We painted it, tried to make it as acceptable as possible. We've got all of our staff in one side of it.
You put lipstick on the pig.
Pretty much. It's a dressed up pig. All of my staff is in one side of a mobile classroom, shoulder to shoulder, desk to desk. The other side we're using for classrooms. It's not big enough, we can't get in it, so I brought in another single wide, like a mobile classroom the kids are in at the high schools, and we're using it for a classroom. I don't know who derailed this train. I'm not in charge of blowing the whistle or anything else on the train. I guess that's y'all's job. I need y'all to put this train back on the tracks and help me build my building.
Well, formally, I need to ask you, the bid you had from Chuck Brand was withdrawn.
What?
Was withdrawn? I see where he withdrew.
Once all this come out and the accusations started flying and the false citizens slid, I also received an email from Chuck Brand, and he says that he does not need the turmoil. He don't want his name drug through the blood, and he will rescind his thing, and he wants nothing to do with it. So whoever, I don't know who you are, somebody turned the train off the tracks, thinking Chuck Brand's trying to rip the county off. I'm going to pull my hat out of it. I'm going to ask y'all to find somebody that'll do this job. And when it's all said and done, just remember that Chuck was going to do it for less than $19,000. And I have a hard time believing that you'll find an engineer that'll come in and do what he was going to do. That will cost you $30 or more. I hope I'm wrong. And I know people think I was trying to pay in his pockets, and it has nothing to do with it. I've been the sheriff 5 years. Everything I spent for this county's taxpayers' money, I spent it like it come out of my billfold. I've wasted no money that I know of. I don't ask y'all for anything that I don't need. I've asked for no frills since I've been here. Everything's been bare bones. Me and you both come in at a bad time. We cut the meat off the bone, we sawed the bone in half, we chewed the marrow out of the bone, there's nothing left to chew. I'm glad the economy's making a turn. And I don't usually say this, but every time I call, I don't even know why Tamara answers the phone, she sees my name.
Because you got a gun.
My hat's off to you, Tamara. I'll never call you if you don't stop what you're doing and help me, and I appreciate that. I want the public to know what good of a job you do. Nobody here's ever fought me on anything that I've proved that I need. I'll stay after the meeting if any public would like to talk to me about this training center or feel that we don't have a need to have this building. I'd be glad to address any part of it. Y'all spend I took off the rest of the day for cancel every meeting I had so that I could stay here. I'll stay here from dark if you want to talk.
Well, I'd like to, go ahead, you want to go ahead?
No, you go first.
I'd like to say just a couple things on the subject, because I know that the sheriff's very frustrated. Yesterday was kind of a tough day. I spent some time talking to Mike Jones, spent some time talking to Tabitha, and also called Mr. Tony Crow, Vernon Collette. We discussed the issue. I've been here 4 years, and we've been talking about closing that landfill since before I got here. And the sheriff does need a training facility, so we need to work out something. I did, so that I made sure I had my facts straight, I did talk to Tabitha, and this bid did come in basically November 21st. And so we've got 60 days. We've got today, we've got the first meeting in January to take care of it, whatever we need to do. But we need to do whatever we need to do to move forward to facilitate that. And I know the direction you were going is now not the direction, but that doesn't mean that we can't get something taken care of here with, number one, this bid and get this taken care of so that we don't lose that and start all over. And then number two, finding somebody to be able to do what we need to do to oversee that project. We've got to move forward to get that facility. There's several projects in the county that we can't just let them sit there.
You need to allow me to go on record while I'm here also. I don't care who y'all hire to build this building. I don't care who you hire to oversee it. All I need is a building. I don't care if y'all oversee it.
Constitutionally, in case you didn't know, he could sue the Board of Commissioners to give what he needs. Now, he and I were elected and came in at the same time. We've been able to sit down and talk about things and come to a compromise on what could and couldn't be done. And like he said, in the worst recession in our lifetime, close to the Great Depression, we had to deal with a lot. But Gary's done without for a long time. And the men and women need the training. And I'd be for trying to move this forward as much as we could. Eric, I'm putting you on the spot here. Is it wrong, and you tell me if in your capacity what you've had to do with this, you've done design. So could and would you, at the price that Chuck Rand gave us, would you oversee this project?
As a clarification, we actually, our contract is a construction management contract. So we're working with Chuck as the designers, and we actually work with purchasing to develop all the bid packages, and as your construction manager, bid through purchasing all this work. And although we did run into some rock, which kind of pushed out some funding, we have acted as your construction manager as well on this, as your design professionals, with Chuck as a county representative.
So we'd actually need somebody else besides yourself to help oversee this?
No, sir. Actually, we somewhat have those responsibilities within our contract. We are actually acting as your program manager and your designers under one contract, but as another leg of that, we actually help put out the bid packages, and we're actually managing those bids packages for the county with Chuck Rand. So it would be an easy transition for us to continue in that role, working with Mike Jones and the sheriff's office, and whoever else the county would, whoever else would be the person we interfaced with. That was Chuck Rand at the time.
I spent some time talking to Mike yesterday, and we've got to have somebody to sign off on things, am I correct? In order for Tabitha to pay these.
I've never seen her pay a bill without somebody authorizing.
That's right.
In fact, sometimes you want 2 or 3 people authorizing it.
She won't pay mine without me saying it.
Exactly right. So we've got to have somebody in a role to be able to do that, Mike.
I agree, and the sheriff's comments were dead on. I mean, we thought we had this thing put to bed until it came off the rails about 48 hours ago because somebody decided to get cute and start making up lies about some of the finest people I've ever had the opportunity to work with. So yes, to answer your question is somebody has to do it. That somebody is not going to be me. If CPS and the sheriff is okay with them doing it, and the board's okay with them doing it, then that's okay with me. I mean, I just can't physically be there to watch the construction move forward. So it really comes down to who are you comfortable with telling you that the facilities that we have contracted are being built the way they were designed, that they're being constructed the way they were intended to be constructed, and you feel comfortable when those invoices come in, that whoever that person is tells you it's fine, that it really is fine, and you authorize the finance director to pay
It's
it.
no different than hiring Croft, as you said, for an additional fee to sign off on the building of the
Sure,
water building.
that's what we intend to do on the water system building. The previous agenda item is to hire them to oversee that construction. They will assign a construction manager under separate, in this case, under a separate contract, to manage that work for us. They've done it before under fire station we did out in Yorkville 3 or 4 years ago when we were lacking staff to man that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll say, in response to your question, I think as Mike identified, it's a matter of how great the comfort level is. The more eyes, the better. Doesn't necessarily mean that fewer eyes is bad. It's just how great is your comfort level over the procedures you have in place. Chuck's role, as I understand, would be, hey, here's an additional set of eyes to make sure that what's coming across for payment has actually been done in compliance with whatever the requirements were.
That price, do we have the exact price?
I believe the
But now,
sheriff.
he hasn't agreed to do it for that, or have you agreed to do it for that?
I have not.
I mean, we're just trying to establish legally, I mean, if we're okay with it, we can hire, but we just don't know what you're gonna charge.
We had all the invoices that were, all the work that's been done out there on that job site. I have approved personally every invoice that's been out there. I sent them to Chuck, and he was another set of eyes, and he forwarded them on to Mr. Jones, so.
Well,
The bid we got from Chuck Rand was $19,328.
let me ask this. The main thing is, we've known the direction we've been going in. We gotta get a training facility for you. We don't wanna lose this. We don't wanna start over. I'd like to see us approve what we've got right here. And then if we need to take a little bit more time, the 2 new commissioners coming in know about this process right here. And if we need to take some time to make some decisions to see what extra person we want to put in there, where we want to bring that person in from, we can do that. And I'm good with either one of 2 things. I'm good with us passing this today, for which you get this taken care of, or I'm also good with tabling it and us making sure that we handle it on January 13th.
But ultimately, just like the Chuck Rand contract, that's below the $50,000 threshold, and that does not require the Board of Commissioners approval. The chairman can actually approve. So as long as the contract is less than that, the chairman can actually enter into any contract as long as it's less than $50,000. So ultimately, we could approve BMK, whatever the name of it is, subject to the chairman contracting with either whatever the name of Eric Johnson's company is or another to actually serve as program manager for bid approval.
You could certainly do that. That would preserve the bid, and you could just not issue a notice to proceed with the construction until you have whatever mechanism in place you want to certify the cost.
And I don't know, I probably shouldn't interject my opinion, but for some
It's never
reason,
stopped you before.
for some reason, when I chose to trust somebody and think that they'd give me a good price to do a job, which I think you're gonna find that this job was priced way below market. Whoever this person is that turned over my train probably would like me to take bids on it. And I don't care. I don't care who bids, I don't care who watches over it. Any of y'all come watch it, I don't care. So whatever it'll take to keep them from turning my train car over again,
Well,
we need to do.
by law, they're not required to take over bids. What a lot of people don't understand is that the actual chairman has authority to spend money within or outside that budget based on our enabling legislation up to $50,000. So, I mean, he can actually contract with someone to do the work for you. It doesn't need Board of Commissioners approval.
You're right, but I think what Gary would like to see, and just tell me if I'm wrong, you're the sheriff here. We need to move forward with this and get something done, but we want to make sure that since whatever happened, we want to make sure that if we're going to check into some folks, Mr. Austin checks into a few folks, Mr. Jones does, bring that back and at least the commissioners know about it, and it's upfront, honest, transparency, and Gary will feel good about that because he doesn't want to go through what we just went through.
Well, I don't know whether it was,
We don't need to.
I'm not even gonna speculate, I don't know whether somebody on this board or a friend of somebody on this board, but somebody didn't like what I was doing. Are they here? I don't know. But I don't wanna proceed and start again and have to go through the same mess over and over again. I have plenty of responsibilities, plenty of things to do other than try to get a train on the tracks and get it headed in a direction, watch it turned upside down, and then try to get back up on the tracks again. I don't have time to keep playing whatever game it is these people want to play with me. I don't have the time. I think you're going, once again, I'm going to say, I think you're going to find that this price was, I don't know why they wouldn't try to humiliate this person, but I think you're going to find out that their laughter is going to cost the taxpayers of this county some money. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be.
Procedurally, Jason, today, we could go ahead like I spoke, approve this, and then our next meeting will be on the 13th, January 13th, bring back. Eric, will that mess us up on your schedule and where you'd hope to be? Or are we still in the time frame to accept the bids, accept what you're doing, and bring somebody back in or around that $19,000 to $20,000 price range?
It will not mess up the schedule on, with BM&K. November 21st, 60 days from then, we should be okay.
Okay. Now
Mr.
what
Chairman, if I can just clarify, so what we have on the agenda is the approval of a construction contract. And what we're talking about with the $19,000 figure, what we're talking about is someone to watch over the contractor to make sure that they're doing what they're doing. It's just simply part of our due diligence, because most litigation that arises out of a failed construction project occurs because nobody was watching what the contractor did, and he or she didn't build it like they were supposed to because nobody was watching. Nobody's suggesting that that would be the case with BM&K, but it is just part of our due diligence as a government to watch over the money to make sure it's properly spent, it's properly built. And in fact, you could hire somebody to double check the person that's watching over the contractor. It's just a matter of how much you want to put in place.
What I'd like to do at this time is to entertain a motion to accept this bid, and then at the January 13th meeting, bring back at least 3 prices to you to look at someone, and we're going to call this person like
Program manager.
program manager,
There'll be a construction manager.
construction manager, to work with Eric and his company to oversee this project.
But
So all we're voting on today is this one contract.
Correct.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion approved. Do I hear a second? Second. Motion and second.
now,
Now,
actually, yeah, you're, by approving this, all these things you talked about, you have not laid that into place. In other words, on his motion, you're approving this contract and it's ready to go. Now, you're talking up here that you want to do something different, but you have not tied that to this contract. Just recognize.
Let me ask you something, Eric. Basically, you said what we knew from the beginning, we've got 60 days from November 21st. Was that comment that you just made, was that we're okay and you're not going to plan on doing anything here the next 3 weeks?
That's correct.
Okay.
But I'd like to clarify one thing. There was a lot of responsibilities Chuck had that are not typical to a program manager. In working with Mike, there is the drawing up of the contract, doing all the legal work, tying all the bid documents together. That's a lot of the stuff that Chuck Rand was doing. So it's not your typical superintendent type or someone who's just going out there watching dirt being moved around. It was a substantial amount of work that Mr. Rand did here and was going to do as a supplement to what the county's responsibilities were too. Now, we are able to do that working with Mr. Jones through our experience in drawing up the contracts with Chuck, but it's a lot more than an overseer of, once the construction contract is done, that's lighter load than all that upfront stuff which, Counselor, you were talking about right there. That's the big push, is getting everything set up initially.
Biggest thing is Chuck was aware of what's going on already.
And I think that's why his fee was, you know, a little bit lower than we probably do it for, because he knew all the contracts and he'd worked around it for so long. He could get through that pretty quickly, and he knew all the county procedures.
Yeah.
And we know them too, more than probably somebody else who would come into, but certainly that's why his, in my opinion, professionally, his fee was representative of that.
So what I ran into on my jobs, or commercial jobs we've done, these guys, you'll be looking at $30,000 to $40,000, what they're gonna charge you.
That's correct. And it's, I do believe professionally, you know, based on Chuck's experience working through the systems and with Paulding County especially, why he could move through those things pretty quickly on a time standpoint. We can as well, but not probably as efficiently as Chuck.
Chuck's position was designed as the Government Services Director to do the very thing that he was contracted for. I made it very clear to Chuck as the county was creating that position, that the county was in need of a person who could assure contractual compliance, bidding compliance on a daily basis and not just every now and then.
That's correct. And tie all that into contracts that was enforceable for us to manage. And again, we do that for counties all day long, but we work with Chuck who did that. So.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the table for the bid price here. And what I'll commit to do is to bring back to this board on January the 13th for Tony and Vernon to consider, along with the rest of the board members, who we'd like to try to get 3 bids in, or as many as possible, maybe more, and take a look at that and then award that bid on the 13th.
Let me ask you this.
I'd like to make amendment to the motion.
Yeah,
Okay, I'd like to make amendment to the motion that actually says that the approval of contract is subject to hiring a program manager, construction manager, whatever the right word is, to oversee the project and draft contracts and so forth.
and in order to do that, sorry, council, I think Mr. Barnett will have to withdraw his.
No, I can make a motion to amend.
Amend it? Okay.
There is a proposed motion to amend. The next question will be, is there a second to the motion to amend?
I'd like to maybe add one more thing to that, that since there's been this discussion, and Gary and I talked yesterday, and I know what you said a minute ago, I don't think anybody on this board had anything to do with that, period, cut and dry, but I can tell you I didn't. So I want that made loud and clear, but I don't think anybody on this board did. I would like to see, that since we've had all this discussion that's going on, that I agree with Tommy's amendment, I would like to see it come to the Board of Commissioners on the 13th, and us do that, even though it should be below the threshold of what the chairman can do.
Just as a matter of clarity, is that a second to Commissioner Graham's motion to amend?
I'll second it with that amendment.
Okay, let me.
I'll include that,
However,
and
you
then come
can
back
include
with
whatever we
it.
got to do to get this
Let's
resolved.
make sure that we are clear procedurally what's going on here. There's a motion to approve the contract in a second. There is a motion to amend the motion in accordance with what Commissioner Graham has said. Let me make a suggestion. If Commissioner Barnett were to withdraw his initial motion, that's fine, and we can just start from scratch with a new motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
You withdraw your
Withdraw
motion?
my motion.
All right, there's no motion on the table.
Do I hear a motion?
I think Tommy knows what we want.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with BMK, subject to that we hire a program manager or construction manager to oversee the process and approve the process as it goes, and that person or whoever that selection be made, be brought before the Board of Commissioners to approve of the January 13th meeting.
I'll second.
And that person needs to be prepared to hit the ground running, January 13th, vote's done.
Okay, we've got a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. I'd like to make a, I'm sorry.
I want to apologize to y'all for me being here and causing y'all some problem, and also the public for delaying y'all. But you should be all doing something else besides listening to me. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
We're gonna get this done.
I'd like to make a major announcement that Dean Bucci was chosen as our next Superior Court judge, and I will try to schedule Dean to come to one of our commission meetings and be introduced to you and congratulate him. And I'm not sure when he will be sworn in to take over. I don't know if that was immediate or in the future, but I will make contact with him, bring him before this board, and we'll have a chance to meet our new Superior Court judge. So with that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to just say, Merry Christmas to everybody, Happy New Year, and see you next year.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.